I'm Leah Lane, an award-winning travel writer and author of Places I Remember, Tales, Truths, Delights from 100 Countries. On this podcast, we share conversations with travelers about fascinating destinations and memorable experiences around the world. Each of the 50 states of the United States offers unique delights for travelers. In this episode, we'll be highlighting some of them with Jessica Laughlin, author and illustrator of the 50 States Bucket List, the ultimate journal for a journey across America. Welcome, Jessica, to Places I Remember.
Good morning, Leah. Thanks for having me on.
A delight. So tell us, how did your book originate?
Several years ago, I started illustrating the maps of the United States, and it started with one, it led to another. Actually always been a pen and ink artist, so it kind of came naturally to me. But once I started doing one, it just, all of a sudden I was drawing my way across the country. And in the meantime, while doing that, I actually learned a lot about each state in the process. I love to travel. I love road trips. So it was a really fun project for me. And then I, of course, ended up with this book deal, so here we have the book that is a collection of all of the state maps, interesting historical places, culture, and landmarks as well. So
it's a lot of fun, and you can tell there's love in there. You can feel it in the illustrations.
Thank you.
Your book is set up in a journal form with charming graphics. What are some of the features of the organization?
Well, it's actually organized by region. You can easily go to each state and see the states that are in there, some unusual things to see in each state, along with some of the more iconic landmarks as well. So it is a book that is easy to navigate through. It reads somewhat like a road trip, you just go from region to region across the United States. And it's also easy to come back to and pinpoint, okay, I'm going here. What are some of the great places to see? What are some of the unusual things? So
absolutely. I think it whets your appetite to go. And then once you go, it gives you little ideas of what to see when you're there. And there are, as I said, lots of fun. I think between us, we've been to all of the states. So let's discuss some surprising bucket list attractions, the landmarks, the scenery, and the cultural references, and include attractions in some states that maybe travelers wouldn't otherwise visit. I'll begin. Let's start with Oklahoma. It was established in 1907. Why was it called the Sooner State?
During that time, there was a land grab, and people were coming to Oklahoma, taking land before it became available to purchase. So,
yeah. And I think in 1830, the Indian Removal Act granted the government authority to remove the indigenous peoples. And the Trail of Tears refers to the long and brutal journey they made, that the Native Americans made. Thousands did not survive. That's a part of the history of Oklahoma. And there's a lot of evidence of that when you travel there. The
right.
National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum is there. It has nearly 30,000 artifacts, paintings, sculptures, and photographs. That's a lot of fun to visit. The historical accounts of cattlemen, rodeos, and Native Americans. It gives the complexity of how the West was forged. And then there's the Dust Bowl, when in the 1930s, many people from Oklahoma and other parts of the area had to leave because of tremendous damage there. And they headed west to California. And there's a lot of documents there of photographer Dorothea Lange and the Woody Guthrie Center in Tulsa, which features a rare collection of his belongings. Anything about that you'd like to say?
Well, it was such a strange natural occurrence to have happened with the Dust Bowl, and how it also coincided with the Great Depression as well. So that time period it was an interesting time period in that it spawned a huge migration to California and to the West as well. Also, Dorothea Lange and those beautiful photos that she took. They were beautiful, but they were so captivating because of the feeling behind them. And I think that that's the sort of thing, too, that when you travel and when you are visiting these sites, to also have that a brief historical connection with what you're seeing, it makes it more interesting as well.
Anywhere in the world, it's always good to know about the place you're going. It gives depth to the travels and adds to the fun as well. Okay, Jessica, how about Arizona?
Oh, I love Arizona. Number one, of course, the Grand Canyon. It's just remarkable. You can hop on a train from Williams and go directly into the Grand Canyon, and they have cowboys on the train. And
I've been on that train.
have you?
Yes, it's a
Oh,
very surprising thing. You sit there
good.
and then
Have you?
there's a holdup that the people come on board.
Yes, I
Yeah,
love
they
it.
rob
I
you,
love
quote unquote. It's
it. Yeah.
if you don't expect it, it's great fun.
I know, it's such a surprise. And sorry for anybody who we've ruined the surprise for, but it is so much fun on that train. And I love that whole Western theme and how much fun that is. And it makes going to the Grand Canyon because otherwise, when you are driving there from the major turnoffs on the highway, it is, about an hour into the park, so making that trip by train is a lot more fun.
I would also say there's a surprise there at Lake Havasu. There's an 1830s London Bridge, which was purchased in 1968, shipped brick by brick from England to the United States, and it was rebuilt on Lake Havasu on the Colorado River. Again, something you don't expect.
Fascinating. Rebuilding that bridge. But yeah, if you want to see the London
Yeah.
Bridge, there you go. So,
Now, Indiana is called the Hoosier State. It's located in the center of America's heartland. I know that it's the racing capital of the world, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Actually, I've been on that. I don't know if everyone can do it, but as a journalist, I was able to go around it in a car. When you're there, you can look up and you see there's room to seat over 250,000 people in the stands, and you really get to feel what it's like to be down there. I know they have a tremendous number of race cars there, even if you don't go on the track, and lots of interesting things. The thing I liked about Indiana the most was the architecture. I know there are towns along the Ohio River where shipbuilding was the industry, and there's some beautiful old historic districts. Tell us a little about that.
that's interesting that you bring up New Albany and that area because my grandparents were from that area. And so I have a deeper connection there to that part of Indiana. It's a beautiful location on the river.
Paddle boats are still going on the river. I think
Yeah,
that's part of the charm along
yeah.
New Albany and in Madison area.
Area is a beautiful National Historic Landmark District. And it does encompass 133 blocks of history. So,
Yeah. There's a town called Columbus that
mhm.
has modern architecture. Some of the greatest architects in the world came to Columbus. It's not that far from Indianapolis, maybe an hour away, and that's exceptional if you enjoy architecture. It's one of the great cities of the country for modern architecture. So that's a surprise. Utah. Tell us what you feel about that state.
Also been to Utah many times, and we do have the Mighty Five national parks there. And so you have that beauty, especially the southern portion of Utah has Zion National Park, you've got Canyonlands, you have Moab, so you have a lot. And the north is beautiful as well. Of course, you get a little bit more pine trees and things towards Salt Lake City. When you're down in the southern region, you have some amazing sandstone rock. That's what makes that region really spectacular. I've been to Zion. You're down in this canyon with the river flowing through, and it's just spectacular. So,
Gorgeous.
there are some things I didn't do there that I would say would be bucket list items as well would be the Narrows or Angel's Landing for those who aren't afraid of heights. That, yeah, the Narrows and all of that.
And I think Bryce Canyon, of course, with the hoodoos,
Yes.
they're rock formations of really unusual shape. They were created from erosion and they're amazing. So everyone loves Bryce to see the hoodoos. The whole area is gorgeous. There are 5 national parks. They're called the Mighty Five: Canyonlands, Arches, Bryce, Capitol Reef, and Zion. It's one of the greatest places in America for scenic beauty, without question. Nebraska, it's called the Cornhusker State. There's lots of corn there. It's the Great Plains.
We
And
know where it got that nickname.
yeah, that one I know.
Yeah.
Omaha, called the state capital of the world. You can walk along the street after having a good steak meal and to the corner of 16th and Dodge. You'll find a collection of striking statues of Nebraska's pioneer days. But there's something that I've always wanted to see. I have never seen it. It's called Henge. Tell me about
It was constructed in the 80s using the cars like Stonehenge. It was definitely a labor of love to have those cars upright. So it's one of those unusual roadside attractions that I think when you're driving across the country, you might want to stop off at a few of these interesting places that otherwise you might overlook, or you might see it in the distance and say, "What is that?"
Absolutely. Nebraska is one of those places.
Interesting thing to see along the long stretch of flatlands.
How about Nevada? That's your home.
Yes. Well, it's very different in the southern region versus the northern region. You get into the Sierras up in the north, and down here, of course, it's desert. In between, you really don't have too much except for some very small towns, which, if you're ever driving through Nevada and you happen to go from Las Vegas to Reno, there are some interesting towns along the way, such as Tonopah, which has a rich mining history. There's
They're ghost towns. They're interesting just for being ghost
very
towns.
interesting. Yeah. I love that kind of stuff. As far as the northern area, one of my favorites is Zephyr Cove. I've always loved Lake Tahoe. Crystal blue water surrounded by pine trees. You have cabins and boats just right out there on the lake. The beautiful shores of Lake Tahoe. Everybody should take a trip up there.
Absolutely. South Dakota. Now, that's a state you don't hear about all the time. You do hear about Mount Rushmore, of course, but there's also another statue. Tell us about that one that's still being built, the
Crazy
largest
horse.
sculpture in the world, right?
A crazy horse. You can walk along, you can see it, and you can visit the monument. It's not yet complete. It's been years in the making. They started it shortly after Mount Rushmore, but it's going to be the tallest monument in the world.
There's also prehistoric South Dakota. And if you go into the museums, you'll see the original fossils. If you go along the road, you'll see cement dinosaurs around, which is lots of fun for families as you drive along.
It is. And I was actually very surprised about that. Of fossils and museums there for kids. Love that.
Tell us about your favorite thing in Florida.
Well, I have an aunt who lives in Orlando, so I've had the opportunity to visit Florida a few times. I thought that St. Augustine was very interesting, historical, beautiful architecture. I thought that was a really fun place, as well as also with all the history. So, also Daytona Beach is really fun.
And you can drive on the beach. It's an area
Yeah, you can
it's
drive.
Daytona racing. I remember way
Yeah.
back when I was in college, you could drive right along the hard packed sands and the water's right there. And there you are going fast along the beach. It's lots of fun. And St.
Florida.
Augustine is considered the oldest city in America. It has a lot of character, different from much of the rest of Florida, which is brand new. Let's go on to another state that interests me and not always on everyone's list, Kentucky. It's sort of one of those in-between states. Here it is. It's called the bluegrass state because the grass is actually a little bit tinted blue because of the limestone, and the horses love to chew on that. And it's a culture. It's part of the ecosystem. Of course, bluegrass music originated in these hills as well. The Kentucky Derby, of course, is something on everyone's bucket list if you like horses and history. You've got the Run for the Roses in May. Churchill Downs is the most acclaimed racetrack in America. If you like to wear elaborate hats and toast with mint juleps and sing My Old Kentucky Home, it's great. Americana. And the Belle of Louisville. It's the longest operating steamboat in America, and it still is paddling along there since 1914.
Yes.
Tell us about moonboats. What is a moonboat? You can find one in Kentucky in the
Yeah.
Cumberland Falls and one in Yosemite. What is it?
It's the way that the light reflects off of the mist in the water. So you have a waterfall and you've got the mist, and at night, and so under certain conditions, it can create what they call a moonbow. So it's a rainbow essentially at night.
I've never
And
seen it, but I've heard of it. There's a falls in South America, Iguazu, that has lots of moonbows. And I've been there, but I never got to see it at night. It's one of those bucket list things like the Northern Lights.
you have to be there at the right time.
How about New Mexico? What do you like there that's maybe a little bit different?
We went there 2 years ago, and it was my first time to visit Santa Fe, and I absolutely loved it. Not only the art, but the culture, the food. It's such a fun place to visit. And it's also historical, and the plaza has rich history with trading and along the Santa Fe Trail, the native cultures and all of the cultures combining. We went to Santeria de Chimayo, which is about 45 minutes north of Santa Fe. along the high road to Taos. It's a Catholic chapel, but it also has holy dirt, and it was built in the 1800s in Chimayo. It's a very interesting, authentic town. This is its centerpiece. It's a beautiful church along a creek that flows right through. So it's a very spiritual place. It's a place that many come to from all over the world, from different faiths, and for its holy dirt. There is a hole in the ground, one of the side chapels there. That is supposedly where the site of the original cross had been, and Catholic mysticism into that as well, but there's native significance too. When you walk in there, you have crutches that are lining the walls from people who have said that they've been cured from putting a little of this holy dirt onto their skin. And it's a very powerful place to visit.
We focused on it in episode 11. I would also say that Route 66, the mother road of America that goes through there, is a wonderful relic in a way, because segments of the original road have nostalgic neon signs, and you have interesting old motels and restaurants. It's a lot of fun. So there's lots to see and do in New Mexico. The idea is to go and to try to not only see the great things like the Grand Canyon, but the fun things like you mentioned with the train. There's so much to enjoy. If you do a little research ahead, your book is one of the ways to do it, and you get more out of your trips that way. Now, the name of the podcast, Places I Remember. So, Jessica, would you please share with us a special memory of your travels in one of the states?
Last year, we took a trip up to Yellowstone, and it was my first time in Wyoming. We stayed in West Yellowstone, which was a great landing place to get in and out of the park easily. And we were there for about 5 days. It was spectacular for me to be able to finally see it, because I had always heard about it. And we took a road trip so that we would be able to stop along the way and see everything.
What was surprising there to you?
The geysers, the buffaloes, I loved it all. I loved seeing the buffaloes crossing the street, and we were perched up on the hill or in the Hayden Valley. You're looking out towards just this beautiful yellow valley with buffaloes roaming freely, and the beautiful waterfalls and Artist Point and the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone.
Now, a lot of people don't realize there's a magnificent canyon.
Yes. Really, when you're standing above it, you can see why they call it Artist Point, because it looks like a painting. And we also went up to the Gallatin Canyon, which was a little north of West Yellowstone. We drove up, and that's in Montana. And that's actually where A River Runs Through It was filmed. That's one of my favorite movies. You're driving along and you're seeing river and fly fishermen on each side of the road in this canyon with rushing waters, and a beautiful part of the country. If you're up that way and you're viewing Yellowstone and you're there for a few days, make sure to also take a trip up and see the Gallatin Canyon too.
Again, a surprise, because you don't expect it so much, but it's, as you say, very special. Well, all 50 states offer special things to see and do. Wherever you travel, the key is to find attractions that are local, different, and unexpected. And you can find these in Jessica Laughlin's book, The 50 States Bucket List, the ultimate journal for a journey across America. Thanks so much, Jessica, for sharing.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be here. Thank you, Leah.
Thanks for listening to our award-winning podcast. We've recorded over 100 episodes of Places I Remember, so follow us on any podcast app. And new monthly episodes are also on YouTube with gorgeous video. My book, Places I Remember, is available in print and Kindle, and I read the audio version. Follow my travel writing at Forbes.com. Contact me at the links in the show notes or on my website, placesirememberlealane.com, and keep making your own travel memories.